it's a message intended to be broadcast out across Russia and resonate with a particular kind of audience. And they're not the same people who usually come and wave flags. Almost every year up until now, excepting the COVID lockdown year, there's been a huge crowd. It's an extremely jubilant affair. And that goes all the way up to Putin participating in what's really a celebration of Russia's military strength. And I think this time round, you saw there was no crowd. There was a select number of kind of top generals invited to participate in that kind of inner circle around Putin. And it was all for the media. It was all for the cameras. It wasn't about participation of, local people in what is usually a massive holiday day.
And is that because of concerns of protests? Actually, if you don't, if you only have people on the government payroll, you're unlikely to have any trouble.
Yeah, well, I think there's an element of that. But then at the same time, I also think there's a question of who is the audience of Victory Day. And it's actually not the people who live in Moscow and the surrounding area. It's Putin's core support out in the Russian regions, the exact kind of people he's depending on to continue to support this, what he calls the special operation, and believe that that's all it is. It's a message intended to be broadcast out across Russia and resonate with a particular kind of audience. And they're not the same people who usually come and wave flags.
And listening to what Putin himself had to say, what can we read into his sort of state of mind as a result of his speech?
Well, I think it was in a lot of ways, it was a very muted speech. There was a lot of speculation, particularly here in Moldova, that he might ramp up the tension and say, well, actually, we're going to take additional steps and use it for an announcement, because the imagery of the Second World War is so strong in a lot of the conflict so far. But in actual fact, it was actually quite a morose speech. He acknowledged for the first time, really, these kind of significant losses of Russian troops, Russian officers in the war in Ukraine. And that's a significant step to be in a position where you have to concede that that's happened. And he said each one of those deaths is a gift to Russia. So it gives you a sense of kind of just how existential he feels this conflict is, that any amount of life, any amount of death is worth bearing in order to achieve his goals there. So I think it was actually quite a scary fight them on the beaches kind of speech.
And there have been, some people had speculated, well, maybe he would use today to sort of declare some sort of Pyrrhic victory to pave a way for withdrawing from Ukraine with his head held high. He clearly didn't do that. What does that tell us about how long you think the conflict, the war, the invasion of Ukraine might last?
Yeah, well, I mean, the initial rhetoric when it came to the quote-unquote special operation was that was exactly what it was. There were not going to be any Russian losses. It was going to be a victory parade through the streets of Kiev. And it's taken a long time for the Russian state to actually adjust to the reality on the ground. And we're now at that point where they're settling into the fact that this is going to be a brutal war of attrition and lots of people are going to die from their side, which is, of course, the only side they would in theory care about. And so I think it's settled into this point where it's no longer possible to cover up the scale of death, and it's no longer possible to maintain like this is an easy victory, as I think they'd expected it would be.